Welcome, fellow freaks, geeks, and nostalgic peeps, to my channel, Slime & Slashers, where, yeah, we talk about everything from Nickelodeon slime to horror movie slashers. And plenty of stuff in between, including books, yeah! Including books. Today's video, it is another book-themed video. My dog Jackson is sitting with me, see? So I'm a little distracted in the intro. He's never like sitting next to me. It's weird. Do you like it though? Look. Look. You see him? Right here. You see the peeps? No? Anyway, today's video is a book-themed video. This is going to be one of my 24 books to read in 2024 lists. I've already done one that has been released, but this 24 in 2024 list will be my Paperbacks from Hell list specifically. So all 24 books are books that I consider Paperbacks from Hell or Paperbacks from Hell adjacent. So stay tuned. We're gonna go to the short intro, and when we come back, we will get into the Paperbacks from Hell. Welcome back, guys! As I said in the intro, I kind of alluded to this. This is my second 24 in 2024 list because I like to make two as of last year. I made a regular 23 books to read in 2023 and a specific Paperback from Hell themed list for 2023. Doing the same thing for next year for 2024, and I'm jazzed. So just to give you an update on my progress from the lists from 2023, I didn't read all 23 of either of my 23 books in 2023 from this year. But you know what? That's okay, because I actually read a lot more than 23 Paperbacks from Hell. I read, I think, 44 or 46. Anyway, so it's way more than the 23 I had put on my specific Paperbacks from Hell list, but I, wanted a little guiding hand. I wanted books that I wanted to keep in mind. So I kind of like that I had the list. I'm not discouraged because I didn't read every single one. I still got to at least 23 Paperbacks from Hell. In fact, I surpassed that. So to me, it's still a success, and I'm thinking of the 2024 lists in the same way. If I don't accomplish either or both lists, that's all right. This one, again, the specific Paperback from Hell list that I'm going to go through with you today is just a guiding hand for me to help me think of Paperbacks from Hell that I want to get to sooner rather than later. And this specific list of paperbacks, this list was inspired by a couple of different things. So some of the books are rollovers from the 23 books to read in 2023 Paperback from Hell list. Some are read what you own challenge books that I want to make a priority. Some are also inspired by my book club, the Midnight Book Society. Every single book we'll be reading for the year of 2024 has already been released. If you missed my announcement, check it out down below. I will link it in the description box. So yeah, all of the books have been announced, and a few of them are Paperback from Hell related. So I might be including those book club books in the list today to become a part of my 24 to read in 2024. And last but certainly not least, the biggest inspiration to this list for me, I love this channel. This channel that I follow is called Paperback Mania. Leon is the host, or was the host. He's no longer making new videos. However, I go back and watch his old videos literally all the time. He's such a great resource for hearing about someone talk about Paperbacks from Hell. Also, he has a lot of old school, awesome book hauls with great vintage books. But I went back and looked at his 2018 top 10 list in terms of his top 10 reads of 2018, and some of the books that I found on his list I have not yet read, and they are Paperbacks from Hell. So I added them to my 24 Paperback from Hell books to read in 2024. Thank you, Leon. I don't know where you went, but I freaking love your channel, and I miss ya. Not that you'll see this, but anyway, I freaking love his channel. And some of the books that he's read in the past, I have put on past lists and have liked. So I think our tastes pretty much align, so I'm confident with the things I've taken from his list and put onto mine. First up, let's start with a rollover. So I did have this on my 2023 Paperback from Hell edition list. This is Summer of Night by Dan Simmons. I really need to get to this. I love coming of age. This is a supernatural type of coming of age book, and I've heard great things about Dan Simmons. I have yet to read any of his books, which is a shame. Let me show you the step back. Boys on Bikes. So, I love Boys Life. This one gets compared to Boys Life a lot, but this one has more horror, I've heard. So, sign me up. I think it's going to be a good time, and I do have audio, so that should make it a little bit easier. I am making this a huge priority. I am not going to have it roll over for another year. Next on my list is an author, not really a specific book, but I want to read not one book by Mark Morris, but tons. But I'm at least putting one book by Mark Morris on this list, and it's going to be whatever I choose. But I'm hoping to get to a lot more books of his than one. And P.S., he's got a new book coming out in 2024. So stay tuned for more deets on that. But the cover has been revealed. He told me about it. He said it's okay to talk about because it's been officially announced. So I'm so stoked. I will also be reading that book. It's not on this list, though, because it's not a Paperback from Hell. It'll be a brand new 2024 release. So I will read that as well. But I also want to read more from his backlist. And that is why I'm putting any book by Mark Morris on this list as like a placeholder. Any book of his will do from his backlist. I just want to get to more of his books this year, period. P.S. It seems like I'm already saying this year, and it's not 2024 yet, so I'm saying this year in terms of 2024, and it doesn't apply. We're still in 2023 as the time I'm filming this, but you might be watching this in 2024. In that case, hello into the future. Thank you for checking out my channel if you're new. I appreciate you guys, but yes, I don't mean to keep saying this year when I'm referring to 2024, so hopefully I can stop doing that, but just giving you guys a warning. I am aware of what I'm doing, and it's very hard to stop. Next book on my list has a brand new e-copy edition. It also has an audiobook, so it's great because it's easy to find this one. This is Where the Chill Waits by T. Chris Martindale. I have read a book by T. Chris Martindale, so I want to read more by him. I don't know too much about this book. I really don't need to know. I just want to get to it. I want to get to as many vintage books as possible, and because this is one of the few with an audiobook, I am putting it on my list and making it a priority. I do want to give a quick shout out to all the publishers out there who keep vintage horror alive and reprint old out-of-print books in new editions. There are a lot of publishers out there who are doing this. The one that comes to the forefront is Crossroad Press, as well as Capricorn Literary. Also, of course, the most popular one, Valancourt Books. They have titles that the introductions are written by Grady Hendrix and Will Erickson of Paperback from Hell fame in terms of the nonfiction book, Paperbacks from Hell. And FYI, Crossroad is also known as Macabre Inc., so just a little fun fact there. So you could search for either thing and should be able to find things on Amazon. And I'm really appreciative of all these publishers. So yes, thank you, thank you. Next book on my list is another rollover from my 23 list, and that is Flowers in the Attic by V.C. Andrews. I'm going to get to it. It isn't a question of if. It's going to happen. I'm ready. I hear it's super messed up. Next, one of my book club books for the year of 2024, The House Next Door by Anne Rivers Seidens. Haunted house story with a little bit of a twist. There's a house in the neighborhood, and it seems to be affecting everyone around that house and everyone in the house, and so one of the families living to this house is like, what the hell, is this going to affect us next? That's the essential gist of it. That's very loose in terms of what I read from the actual premise, but I'm excited about this. And quickly, two more books that are book club books that I'm going to put on my 24 books to read in 2024 Paperback from Hell edition will be Grimm Memorials by R. Patrick Gates. This is our book club pick for February. Again, my book club is the Midnight Book Society. Join us. Our Discord is free and open to the public, and we will have live shows, discussions for every book. So lots of fun. This one also has an audiobook, so if you're wanting to join in but you prefer audio, there is one! And the other book that is a part of my book club picks will be Nightscape by Stephen R. George. The original cover to this, super gnarly, makes me really intrigued. It seems like a kid is almost getting harassed by some kind of entity or demon or spirit or something, and slowly he starts to change, lose strength, and not be in control of himself, and not be himself, essentially. That is the basic gist. So yes, that is another one of my book club picks, and that completes all of my book club books on this list. A book that is a big priority for the Read What You Own challenge for me is The Light at the End by Skip Inspector. I have yet to read a book by Skip Inspector, and that needs to change. 2024 is as good of a time as any, so I'm going to dig in. This one also has audio, luckily, so a lot of the books on my list don't, but it just so happens the books that I am naming at the beginning do have audio. This one, I already have the audio. I already own it when it was on sale a couple of months ago, so I was like, yes, I need this. I've heard great things about Skip Inspector. They're essentially like the godfathers, the creators of the splatterpunk subgenre. This takes place in New York. I think there are creepy things going down in the subway systems, so that's all I need to know. I'm ready for some Skip Inspector. Let's go. Next, we have a book by Ken Greenhall, a vintage horror author that I am obsessed with. I have read Hellhound by Ken Greenhall, as well as Elizabeth by Ken Greenhall. Also, he wrote that book under the name Jessica Hamilton, so you can find it under either name, but loved both of those books so much. So I'd like to get to more by Ken Greenhall, so I found in the wild Childgrave, and it just so happens there is an audiobook of this available on Amazon right now. I'm sure other places too, but I found one on Amazon.
300 years ago in the town of Childgrave, a pretty little girl screamed in terror as a tortured, hunger-maddened man ended her innocent life. Now a devoted young father has taken his little girl and followed the strange, beautiful woman he loves to her home in Childgrave. Here, every man, woman, and child lives in a devout homage to a harsh and terrible past, and supernatural forces wait unseen. Soon a little girl will be called to face a horrifying fate, a dark ritual begun in terror 300 years ago.
Next up, the Books of Blood. It's a little crazy that I have not read any of the Books of Blood. There's more than one volume. This is volume 1. It's the only volume I've ever found in the wild of the Books of Blood, so I was so excited to find this. I stumbled upon it. It was in a different state when I was traveling. I always try to go to used bookstores when we travel, so sometimes I'm lucky and I find some gems like this one. I really love the covers of these Books of Blood, the original vintage covers. I do have a new edition of volumes 1 through 3 together, which is what I'll probably actually use to read this. I don't care if I get to one volume or 1 through 3. I want to at least get to, 1. So, 2024, here I come! Books of Blood. Next, a book by Douglas Borton. I have read 2 other books by Douglas Borton. I have read Cain, which I thought was just okay. And then I read Death Song, which I thought was fantastic. It was so bonkers, so wild, so zany. I'm hoping Dreamhouse will be the same as Death Song. And from what I've read about it, it is the same, or in the same vein in terms of zany, crazy, wild story. That's what I'm looking for. I am looking for a few of these books to be a little bit off the wall, a little bit pulpy. I think Dreamhouse will deliver. So here we go.
Can you imagine a house called Ragged Edge, where giant fireballs appeared from nowhere to barbecue human flesh, where a voluptuous teenage sex queen turned into a skeleton seductress, where a phantom Porsche drove victims to death, where Nazi conquerors goose-stepped out of the past to torture and slay, where you were afraid to go to sleep because of the nightmares that came every night, and where waking up was even more terrifying.
Next, we have a hardcover edition of one of the paperbacks from hell I want to get to. It's Down on the Farm by John Stucher? I don't even know. Don't judge me, please. Stchur. It is what it is.
It would have slept on, if necessary, for 1,000 years, dreaming its dreams of pure evil, and if 1,000 years weren't enough, then another 1,000. But the very power of those dreams was its undoing. The creatures of this place were sensitive to them. Few animals paused for very long on that particular knoll in southeastern Michigan, not even to die.
So I've heard great things about this. Specifically, this is one of the books I got off of Leon's list. I don't know if it was from his 2018 list or a different list of favorite reads, but I definitely heard him talk about this as a zany, fun read. Very pulpy. I wish I owned the paperback version, but I only own this hardcover edition because when I saw it mentioned on Leon's channel, I went and bought it. I don't often go and buy old school books online, but sometimes when I hear people talk about it being an actual good read, I actually do. So this is one of those cases, and I'm excited to read it in 2024, if I get to it, which I'm hoping I will. Next up, a somewhat notorious book when it comes to the circles of Paperbacks from Hell fans, and this is The Feeding by Lee Clark. Look at this amazing cover, by the way. These kids standing at the entrance of this creepy cave, which looks like a face. And the cave entrance is like an open mouth, ready to devour them. I've heard this is nuts. I'm ready to get to it. I'm a little scared to read this vintage copy because it's not that bent up. I really don't want to damage it, but I do want to read it. So I'm hoping to get to it in 2024. That's why it's on the list. It should be a fun time, I'm hoping. Here we have more of a classic versus a pure paperback from hell, but still I'm putting it on the list because it is a vintage horror book. We've got Rosemary's Baby. Yeah, I've got to get to it. I cannot believe I've not already read this. And I've loved the movie for a long time, so I'm really eager to get to the book. I think it's pretty faithful from what I've heard. Next up, Doppelganger.
It was shapeless, dark, and transparent.
This book is actually in my Patreon jar. I have a jar where my Patreon members suggest a book they'd like me to read, and my friend Melissa wants me to read this one because she's heard mixed things, but she's also heard it's bonkers, and she wants me to see what it's like before she, actually gets to it. So I am excited to read this. I've also heard mixed things, but I think Leon actually liked this one. So again, just to mention him one more time, Leon from the channel Paperback Mania. Fantastic. I really like his pulpy taste. I feel like I have similar tastes in that I love a good corny, pulpy, crazy, wild, bonkers time when it comes to vintage horror. Here we have one of my rollovers. It's The Store by Bentley Little. I have been debating forever and a day on what Bentley Little to read as my first Bentley Little. I've heard terrible things about Bentley Little from some people, amazing things about him from others. So you know what? It's actually time to see what I think about his writing for myself. This is one of the ones that people have told me to start off with, that it's really, really good. There is an audiobook. I already own it. So there is no reason not to read it. I have no excuses. 2024 or bust. Next up, The Ceremonies by T.E.D. Klein. I never know if you're supposed to say Ted or actually the initials T.E.D. Klein, but this was put on my list because I am doing a project in 2024, and the project involves reading my favorite authors and my favorite booktubers. So this book is specifically on my 24 to read in 2024 because it is a favorite of one of the people who will be featured in my vlog series, which I'm thinking I'm going to call Copycat or Copycorn. We'll see. Another book that is on the list because of that vlogging Copycat Copycorn project is Incarnate by Ramsey Campbell, a book I've heard fantastic things about from a person I trust. That's the person I'm doing one of the vlogs on, so I can't say who it is. It's going to be a surprise. I'll reveal that soon, but I am pumped. In fact, the premise of this made me extra excited because let me just read you a little bit about what it's about. I just gotta find where it is. I can't find the description in here. On the back is just a whole bunch of blurbs, and in the front it's not in there either. However, I remember from reading the initial synopses on Goodreads when I first looked it up, I believe this has to do with television production, like a characters in TV or something. Anyway, I used to work in TV, so I think this will be fun and appropriate, and I'm extra intrigued because of that reason. Like I said, I worked in TV for 15 years as an associate producer and editor, among other things. So, yeah, that's kind of a selfish reason to be excited about it, but hey, we all have our biases, right? So I think that'll be a fun little thing to see how they talk about that in this book. If I'm remembering the premise right in the first place, but I believe that there is a character who works in TV. Robert McCammon! Robert McCammon! McCammon! If you guys didn't know, I don't know why I just got into an opera version of McCammon, but as I was saying, if you guys didn't know, I freaking love Robert McCammon. He is my favorite author. Hands down, it's no contest. It's not even close. He's amazing. So I need to read more by him. I keep saying that since I read the first book that I read from him, which was Boy's Life, which is still my favorite book by him and also my favorite book of all time. But there are still plenty of good books of his that I have not read, including this one, which is mine. This is more of a thriller. I think a lot of McCammon's books are classified as horror, but they're not. So unfortunately, I think a lot of his books were mismarketed. This one, it just comes off like a thriller. Essentially, I know that this woman, her baby is taken by a very bad man who's out for personal vengeance, and she has to go on a mission to try to save her child. And again, fast-paced, full of tension. This is going to be a buddy read that I'm doing with my friend Kelly and Katrina, but also it's going to be a book club pick of somebody I know, but I will not give away the details. The announcement video for that is coming soon, and once it's announced, I will link the video down below. But make sure you check out both Kelly at Kelly Hooked on Books, and of course Katrina at Katrina Brown. They both have fantastic channels, and they both talk about vintage horror. Next up, this is specifically on the list because of Leon. I know for sure that he mentioned this in his top 10 reads from 2018, and this one is kind of an underrated pick because I've not really heard anybody else talk about this book, and I just want to see what I think of it for myself. This is the Orus Process by Daniel Galore. It is a Del Abyss book. You can kind of almost tell from the design. The Del Abyss line has a very specific look, very dark, very grungy looking.
Beware the living, beware the dead. The Orpheus Process.
So I believe like the scientist finds a way how to bring back dead bodies to life. So it almost has like a zombie flair to it, but a little bit more bonkers, I've heard. Probably the book that I'm most intimidated by on this list is Mirror by Graham Masterton. I have read 2 other books by Graham Masterton, and I did enjoy, well, I mostly enjoyed them. I do think that one of them could have been a little bit better, but hey, that's neither here nor there. I have heard great things about Mirror specifically, again, from Leon, the Paperback Maniac, from the channel Paperback Mania, and it's just so long. That's why I'm intimidated. It's so chunky. Oh my gosh, yeah, it's over 400 pages, and that makes me nervous. Because reading a book that long, a vintage book that long without audio is hard for me these days since I've become so reliant on audiobooks, but I'm thinking I'm going to have a good time. It sounds like it's a really fun story.
The child was dead, yet lived, miraculously trapped behind silvered glass. His freedom was worth any price, but that price is more than any man can pay. The mirror is a gateway to hell!
Sounds good to me, so let's try and get to it in 2024, okay? We'll see what happens. A surprising book on my list. It does have an audiobook because it's written by a very famous, well-known author. And you might not know that because it says it's written here by Brian Coffey. You might not even know who that is. But it's actually Dean Koontz who wrote this. This is The Voice of the Night. This is just a vintage edition where it was released under a different name. He was writing under a different name. It's essentially a coming-of-age story, and again, I heard about this from Leon, and although I'm not the hugest fan of Dean Koontz because everything he releases is uber popular, everyone, is already digging into his books, there are plenty of other lesser-known authors out there to check out besides Dean Koontz, but because I heard it's a great coming-of-age story, I'm a sucker for coming-of-age, so that kind of sold me on it, and I really want to see if I'm going to like it, so it's not really long either, and that's another plus. Here we have Monastery by Patrick Whalen, and Patrick Whalen is an author that I've heard pretty decent things about. This one you would think could be about a group of monks, but I think it is actually a vampire book. And in case anyone is interested in this book, this is one of the books that is available as a newer e-copy edition on Amazon. Again, special shout out to those publishers keeping vintage horror alive. And I'm eager to get to this and just to see what I think about Patrick Whalen, considering I have a couple of books of his in my collection. So if I like this one, even if I don't, I'll probably give him another chance. But if I like this one, I'll be really excited and eager to check out more by him. And last but not least, here we have The Dwelling by Tom Elliott. The old house sits on the edge of town, alone and abandoned. A house with a dreadful, undying secret. So it sounds like a haunted house story of sorts. Usually those are pretty standard. However, I've heard good things about this, not from Leon or from, an author or a booktuber I know, but I do follow a couple of blogs online. And this one came from a random vintage horror blog that doesn't really post any articles anymore, but they reviewed a whole bunch of vintage horror, and this one was one of the more solid entries. And he basically suggested checking it out. If I can find where I found the article and, this blog post, I will link it below. Alright, that was the official list of 24 books to read in 2024, Paperback from Hell edition. However, I do have a couple of honorable mentions that I just want to shout out super fast. So, The Brains of Rats is one of the books that I'd like to add in and get to if possible. Again, this year, 2023, I read over 40 paperbacks from hell. So I know I can read more than these 24 here. Also, I should note, I am reading 12 Richard Laymon books because I have a public read-along project that I'm doing, and it's all surrounding Richard Laymon. Will I survive, or will I literally lose my mind by the end of 2024 because too much Laymon, too many rumps? He writes about rumps a lot. That's why I say too many rumps. But anyway, we will see how that goes. So that will be in addition to these 24 books. I also have 12 Richard Laymon books, which are also vintage books that I'm reading. If you guys want to know more deets about the Richard Laymon project and which books I'm reading for what months, again, it is a public readathon, so it's open to everybody who wants to join. For any of the months, all of the months, some of the months, whatevs, none of the months, that's okay too. It's separate from my book club. Again, linked below, the book club video, and I'll also link the Richard Laymon public read-along announcement. Another honorable mention I'd love to get to, Black Ambrosia. This is one of my priority reads for the Read What You Own challenge. So I've never read anything by Elizabeth Engstrom, and 2024, again, much like I've said about some of these other books, it's not a question of if, it's gonna happen. Especially because this has audio. There's really no reason not to pick it up, not to read it in 2024. And the last honorable mention is Blood Moon by Mason Burgess. I've heard that this is a little trashy. I was kind of snooping on Facebook groups that talk about vintage horror and horror in general, and people were asking like any hidden gems. Somebody mentioned this one and said that it was trashy, and I was like, okay, whatevs, I'll try it. Again, that's why it's just an honorable mention. I think this could be problematic, but we will see. If it's trashy and fun, then I won't regret reading it. If it's trashy and boring, that's the only time I regret reading a book, really. If it's boring and there's no redeeming qualities, but if it's trashy and fun, though, heck yes, then I'm excited. Then I found like a hidden gem that not a lot of people have read. And I'm always looking out for more vintage books to put on my list. So guys, if you have a vintage horror book, a Paperback from Hell book that you think I would love, especially if it's wild, out there, crazy, really fast-paced, then please let me know down below in the comments. I would love more suggestions from you guys. I am always on the lookout. I am literally like scouring the internet for people who have read vintage horror hidden gems. So if you have any to suggest to me, please, please, please leave whatever recommendations below, and I will be happy to consider checking the book out, or the books out if you leave multiple suggestions. Alright though, guys, for this time, that is it for me. Thank you so much for checking out this video. I hope you're as excited for 2024 as I am. I am really pumped. I think it's going to be a fresh, fun year. I think it's going to have a lot of exciting things waiting for all of us, not just me. I'm really pumped about the books I've picked for this list and for my other 24 to read in 2024, which is really just compiled of a whole bunch of random books. Some horror, some thriller, some romance, some mystery, and even a classic here and there. So that list, again, it's linked below, as I said earlier, if you want to check out my other 24 and 2024 lists. But this one, I don't know, vintage horror has a special place in my heart. I will never neglect vintage horror if I can help it. And so I thought it deserved its own list, just like last year. I decided why not keep the tradition going. At first, I thought maybe I would only pick 12 out and then use my wheel or my TBR game to pick out the others. But even if I don't get to every single one of these, I know I'm going to get to over 24 Paperbacks from Hell in general, which makes me happy because I try to diversify my reading in terms of I don't want to read just new releases. I want to have a variety of books I'm reading from different publishing years, and I think having a list like this helps accomplish that. So once again, guys, thank you so much for spending your time with me. You know it means a ton. It's time to start getting pumped for the new year. Thank you guys for letting me share my excitement with you. Like I said though, for this time, that is it for me. Till next time, guys, you know what you can do. Keep on killing it in hell. No, just kidding. Just keep on killing it in general. Bye, guys.